All right, you grasshoppers. Here we are on Friday morning. I think we decided now we'll just get bald guys on the show just so my hair doesn't look too bad. So here we've got Nick Zanini. I met Nick several years ago, and he thinks he's not too cool, but I think he's really cool. He served in the Army in the 82nd. And what was your rank again? You were a specialist?
Yeah, I was a specialist, yeah.
Good. And how long were you in?
Low level.
Nah, you were not low level. How long were you in the Army?
I spent 4 years in the Army, and then I got out.
Wow. And where'd you do your training?
So I trained in Fort Benning for most of it.
Right.
That's where I did infantry school, airborne school, ranger school, all that stuff. And then I was in Fort Bragg for my whole entire enlistment, except for about a year and a half in Afghanistan.
Oh, wow. I don't know how much I should ask or what, but did you see some action over in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I mean, we saw a little bit, like my I always like to tell people it's like I have some friends who went through a lot of stuff,
right,
and I have some friends who never saw anything, and we were somewhere in the middle. I mean, like we had some contact here and there, and we were in some different situations, but it wasn't anything like worth making a movie over or anything too cool like that. You know what I mean?
We'll see about that. How's your health there? Mentally, physically, everything's good?
Yeah, I mean, I broke my leg overseas, so I got 7 screws, 2 plates, and a wire in my leg. But other than that, I mean, shoot, I'm good. I mean, my ankle, my foot, everything works good, and
right.
And I recovered fully, so I'm good.
And now you're a strength and conditioning coach at Wake Forest University?
Yeah. So I've been a strength coach with Wake Forest University for the past 3 years, going into my 4th year there.
Wow. Now, were you always into fitness, like before the Army and since you got out?
I mean, so I grew up a big boxing fan, and I was always in and out of boxing gyms as a kid, and I played every sport ever known to man. I even tried hockey when I moved to Maine because that was a sport. But there's a problem with being born in California, raised in Maine, is that you can't skate for anything, and so you just end up sitting in the goal and trying to block the puck terribly. So that one didn't work out too much, but
a lot of people they look at old video of me and thinking I was born in California too. I wasn't a great skater either, so we got away with it though. We fooled it for a while. So you were always into fitness. Did you then make a conscious decision that you were going to make this your career then?
So what happened, I guess, with fitness is I got out of the Army, and like a lot of people, I think that when I got out, I was kind of a little bit lost in the sauce. I wasn't really sure what my place was. For 4 years. Everybody had been kind of telling me what to do and which way to go and what time to be places. And you had an understanding of where you were in the world.
Right.
And I didn't really know where my place in the world was 100%. So, I found myself struggling a little bit as a civilian. Right. And I got in some trouble. And then after I got in some trouble, I ended up moving to New York, which when I met you. And right about when I met you, I had just gotten into the personal training world. Right. And I found that the personal training world had me, focusing on my own fitness as well as the fitness of other people. And it kind of had me taking care of myself a little bit more. And it allowed me to get my life back into the right kind of order it needed to be in. And I just kind of ran with it from there. It felt good. It felt natural. Being active and
that's cool. That's cool. I do some podcasts once in a while with the former Navy SEAL, Patrick Barr, and he talked about the same thing, how he really struggled when he got out of the teams. Like he just couldn't cope with the fact he wasn't part of a team anymore. So it's almost similar to stuff you're talking about, right? It's just you're so used to people telling you what to do, that lifestyle of being in the military, that now it just wasn't that easy to flip off a switch, right?
Yeah, I mean the team thing is the most important. And look, I think there's a big parallel in athletics and the military, right? So collegiate athletics and professional athletics, I mean, the careers are normally not extended. You know what I mean? Some people have extended careers, and those people are super lucky. In the military, some people have extended careers, and I mean, that works for them. And even they struggle in the end, right? When they get out, is like, okay, well, what's my role now? Like, where do I fit in this? When you're part of a team, when you're part of that community, you know what your role is. You know what's expected of you. You know where you fit in with things. And it allows you to kind of go ahead and know your responsibilities and be able to act on those on a regular basis. Whereas when you first get out, you're like, all right, I work this job, but it's every man for himself. And then this guy over here is going to stab me in the back so he can get my job next week. and it gets a little dicey like that. And as I got into fitness, it got more about, like kind of realigning into a team setting. And then as I got into the collegiate sports world, it was perfect fit, like, because it's like, okay, this is your role. And I mean, at first I was a sports med guy, right? So I first got in as an athletic trainer in sports medicine. That's what my degree's in.
Right.
And I felt like I was kind of like mommy and daddy in that situation where it's like, hey, I made you a doctor's appointment, like, how you feeling today? Like, kind of stuff. And you're kind of like babying the athletes a little bit more. Whereas I feel like now as like a performance coach, like you're more like big brother, like where it's like, hey, dude, like you messed that up.
Yep.
Let's take care. You can hold guys a little bit more accountable. Like we still held people accountable on the sports medicine side of things. I'm not trying to downplay their role or it's just a different relationship with the athlete where it's like you get to be a little bit more tough love on them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like your job is just to cater to him. It's to push him and get better, him or her better, right? It's interesting listening to you talk to you. Like you seem like you've got a really good handle on it and understanding, what the problem was before when you first got out and where you are now. Were you always that way? Did you understand what was going on when you first got out?
No, I think if I did, it would have resolved itself a little faster. Like I said, I struggled there for about a couple years, maybe like 1 or 2 years. I would say the struggle happened. So I got out and moved to Boston with my brother. That was the beginning of me getting back into fitness because I was making fun of him for getting fat because he had just gotten fat. So I was in the military staying in shape and I got out and my brother had packed on like 50, 60 pounds since the last time I had seen him. I was like what's going on here? So we ended up going to work every day and then we'd hit the gym afterwards. So it was like we worked in a banquet kitchen in Boston, South Boston, and we would do like these large catering events and we'd be at work all day. I mean, I'm talking like 12, 13-hour days, and then we'd get out and we'd go box for about 45 minutes and then we'd hit the weights.
Right.
And that was our routine. It was like every day. And he was like, you're pretty good at this. And that kind of got my mind going in that direction. But at the same time, I was still very reactive. In the military, you could be a little bit more reactive to what people say. You could tell people a little bit more how you were feeling, honestly, without a filter. And I hadn't really developed like my civilian filter yet that you need to be successful in this side of things.
Yeah. That's interesting. So for people that are just checking in with us, this is Nick Zanini. He's in the Army in the 82nd. He was a specialist, and now he's a strength and conditioning coach at the University of Wake Forest. And a great story. You know what I like about your story too, and I tell people this all the time. Listen, you see people that are very successful, or people that are just just doing whatever in life, and I think people sometimes think, well, they've never made any mistakes, right? It's just always been this uphill. Everything's gone great. Like Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky or whoever it is. But it pretty much always people have made mistakes. I know for me, I was so fortunate in my life, playing the NHL for 11 years, being an agent and doing all the stuff I've done. But I think back, like all this process for me, all this True Grit Life stuff that I've done and speaking to other people, it kind of makes me go back and look at my life and some of the things I did. And I shake my head sometimes like, what were you thinking, right? I mean, some of the, I tell the story of I was trying out for the Canadian Olympic team back in 1980. And I thought there's this great idea to go out and first night of training camp, I went out and decided I was going to have a few adult beverages with the guys, and then decided to put all the furniture from the TV room where we were staying under the trainer's car at 3 o'clock in the morning. And, I think back to myself, I actually thought that was a good idea when I was doing it. Right. And then I'm like, the next day they sent me home. That was my tryout. It was done with, right. So, but I tell the story more to show people that, like you said, you struggled for a little bit. That doesn't mean you're a bad person, that you're not going to get to where you want to get. It's what you do about it after. Right. And now the whole fitness thing for you is something that is, and again, that's not for everybody. That was Nick Zanini's thing that you wanted to do and really work for you. So tell me, like, the fitness part. So you're teaching other people, and I do a little bit the same, right? So I get up in the morning, I go for that 4 o'clock march, and I post it to everybody because I want to inspire other people and get into the gym and everything. But for me, the more I've done to try to help other people, it's better for me too. I don't know how you are. I feel like mentally and physically, I've never been better because of the stuff I'm doing to show other people what to do, right? Yeah.
So I think a big part of that is that, like, as human beings, we have like an obligation to human beings, like, and I think that
Wow, that's cool. I like that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I like the way you said that. We have an obligation. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of almost stealing that from. There's an author named Sebastian Junger, and I don't know if you've ever read any of his work. He wrote a really good book called Tribe. That's like, I don't know how many times I've read it or recommended it, but it's a lot. And if you haven't heard it or checked it out or read it, you definitely should. And he was a war reporter for years. He did a documentary called Restrepo on Afghanistan. It's very famous. And he talks a lot about how we as a society have a responsibility to each other. And he talks about the egalitarian kind of lifestyle of like tribalism that took place for, thousands and thousands of years before we became this giant, population that's super connected. And it's like, you don't really know who to trust or what to believe or anything anymore, but we have an obligation to each other. And I think the more you fulfill that obligation, the more you find fulfillment. Like the more you really kind of get an understanding of like what your purpose is. Because I mean, what is our purpose if it's not to help each other out and to kind of try to leave our mark by influencing other people to leave their mark. Right. And it's like behind every great person ever, there was a level of inspiration that they had, whether it's Nelson Mandela or the president or whoever, so it's like everybody will speak on who their inspirations are.
Absolutely.
And we have the opportunity to be somebody's inspiration. I think that's huge. And I think that's an important thing to remember.
That was very well said. That was incredible. For me, and again, through this whole process, I really never thought too much about what my inspiration was because I just felt like my whole life I was just always inspired. But that made me start to look back and think, well, I growing up on a dairy farm, my father and grandfather would have to get up every day and milk those cows twice a day. And it didn't matter if they were sick or tired or what was going on. And nobody was writing any articles talking about how great they were. It wasn't ESPN, wasn't there interviewing them. They just showed up every day and milked those cows twice a day. And I look back at anything that I ever done that I was successful in. That was how I did it. I was never the best athlete on any team I ever played on. As an agent, I wasn't the smartest guy in the room. I just showed up every day and did my job. And I didn't realize because it was just always there. That inspiration was always there in my life with my father and grandfather with that attitude just showing up every day, right? So it's the same thing you're saying that, it doesn't, not my obligation is the way you put it. That's a fantastic way of putting it, is to help other people see that just by showing up every day, either they're already doing that and they need to know how great of a person they are, how glorious of a person they are, or if they're struggling with themselves, they just need to know, just keep grinding it up, just getting up every day. And that's going to be that way to get to where you want to get, right? So it's the same thing you're talking about. It's that, being obligated to other people and showing them how to do things. So do you find when you're coaching these, it sounds like I know the answer already, but when you're coaching and strength coaching these young guys and girls at Wake Forest, do you think it's not just the physical part, but it's also the mental part you're helping with?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's what I kind of meant by being a big brother. It wasn't like, it wasn't like a reference to that book back in the day, 1985 or whatever, 1989.
Yeah.
It was more like, hey, so to go back on to your point earlier about like early life struggles, I look back when I was 17, 18, 19 years old, right? I never graduated high school. I was thrown out of multiple high schools, and I have a big brother, but my big brother was like 2 years older than me, and everything I did dumb, we did together.
Right. So
it wasn't like I had that person who was like giving me like really sound, solid advice on like how not to mess up.
Right.
So for me, it's like I get to be a sound person of advice. Like, I get to give these kids like some little tidbits here and there. Like, I don't tell them everything I did when I was younger because I don't want to even go down that road. Yeah. But what I do is I try to tell them like, hey, listen, like I've done what you're talking about, and that's really a bad idea. Maybe we shouldn't do that. Like maybe you shouldn't talk about that in this setting. Like maybe you should, what I mean? And it allows you to kind of steer a young population into making more responsible decisions that won't affect them in the same way that, like, I think about it like things affected me. I ended up in the military because I didn't graduate high school because I don't know, I didn't know what I was doing in my life, and then when I got in the military, I was rapidly pulled into like a group of guys who were kind of angry to be in the military, and they were all like, "Oh, F this," and then my roommate, one of my mentors in the military, he's a few years older than me. He'd been to combat. He was Ranger qualified, and I'll never forget. Like he pulled me aside and he said, "Listen, man," he's like, "you hang out with those guys, you're going to end up with that mentality. And if you take that mentality, you're never going to be successful in this or anything else you do." And this guy was like 20, 21 years old, right? And I'm like 18 years old, and he's not much older than me, but I mean, he's got it figured out, right? And he's giving me all this really great advice. And there's a lot of times where I'm doing anything, and I think back to him and what he imparted upon me, and like how he positively affected my life, because he positively affected my life throughout my entire military career. And he continues, even though I haven't talked to him in years. Not sure if he's still with us. Like, I kind of got some news a while ago that he wasn't, and then I wasn't able to find any information on that and haven't been able to track him down. So not sure. I'm kind of in the dark on that one. And so he imparted all this like really, really good life knowledge on me, like at a very young age. And it still continues to be with me, and I really like the mentality he took through like everything.
Did you take his advice right away?
Yeah, I did. It was more or less, it was kind of out of fear a little bit. He was an intimidating guy too. And when I say he pulled me aside, like he pulled me inside, like into a room, he locked the door, and I thought he was going to, give me a beating, to be honest. I was like, all right, here it comes. Like,
but that's pretty impressive. Obviously he saw something in you that you were worth it to him, right? Like if you were like, seemed like those other guys he didn't do the same thing with, he pulled you aside because he must have saw this, and you're getting tied into a crowd you just don't belong in, right? So that's a heck of a compliment to you too, right?
I think what it was is that I was young, I was new to the platoon. Everybody just got back from Iraq when I first got there, and they had all been on like a couple of deployments, and you had like your salty dog, you had your guys who were just super bitter and salty, and their military experience wasn't what they expected, and a lot of the reason is because they didn't make it what they wanted. Right. It's like anything else. Like you could be in the NHL, right? And if you're in the NHL and you're just trying to skate by in the NHL, like no pun intended, if you're just trying to like skate by though, and like you're doing the bare minimum to stay there, you're gonna have a bare minimum experience. You know what I mean? And it's like if you're working your tail off, I had this conversation with a friend of mine who played in the NFL for like 5-6 years, right? And we talk about it all the time. I'm like, Chris, you're not the most athletic, like naturally, like super gifted guy. Like he's not Ndamukong Suh, right? He played D tackle, right? Like he's not one of those D line guys like a Cameron Wake, he's not one of those dudes who like just really sets himself apart, right, physically and athletically. And I'm like, but you had that work ethic that allowed you to take your level of talent and just keep grinding it out and get to that level. And then once he got there, he ended up, with like the grittiest team ever, the New England Patriots. And I obviously, like I say that with a lot of bias, but I mean, that's what they are. If you look at that team, it's not a full-fledged team of superstars and like, it's a bunch of guys who just really love football. They want to play football, and they're willing to work their butts off every single day so that they can win. And as long as they go in there and they have that work mentality, they maintain their spot on the team. And as soon as they lose it, they're gone. But that roster is filled with guys like Chris, where it's like you guys just worked harder than everybody else, and your dedication to your craft allows you to go ahead and be successful.
Right.
At some point, that's limited, right?
And the big thing there too, and you touched on already, is that leadership too, right? Because you have to have somebody there to point out to them that you don't have to always make the big play. I hear Bill Belichick saying all the time, just do your job. Like he's not looking for that, your buddy, for example, to, score a touchdown and make an interception. He wants him, if he's a D lineman, he's got a job to do on each play. And I think that's where leadership, and it's like you were saying too, with, the young guy, the guy a little bit older than you that pulled you aside into the room, to have that leader to point out to you what you shouldn't be doing, what you should be doing is important, especially at a young age. I had the same thing with like Herb Brooks when he coached us. I tell the story all the time about we had this one team meeting, and he's going around to everybody saying all these great things what they're supposed to be doing and not doing. And he got to me and he said, "Laidlaw, if you get the puck, give it to somebody else. You're not supposed to have it." And he did in front of the whole team. And it was funny and everything. When he said it, I was devastated, right? But it ended up being a real compliment. He thought I was mentally tough enough to handle it. But it's that guidance. I had other guys like Carol Vadney I talk about all the time. He's another defenseman that helped me and showed me what way to go. And then it kind of goes around full circle, right? So now here we are when we started this conversation. We had all these people on your side and my side helping us to get to where we needed to get. And now we're in the position now where we can give it back to somebody else, right? So that's all that, they felt obligated to help us, and now we're obligated to help others. And it's just, and I think we're fortunate that we've been having that. Not everybody's always gotten that though, right? Like there's some kids that they've never had that in their life where somebody's helped them get someplace. And that's why it's really important for us to be, everybody to be helping people. And I view it too that like, I just feel like I'm a stronger person when I'm reaching other people. I hate to say it like this, but kind of reaching down and pulling somebody up, right? And it's like, I think you're a weaker person if you get in a competition, you're pushing other people down. The stronger person really reaches up and grabs them. And that's like, you seem like physically and mentally, the stuff you've been through, it's made you a stronger person.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment 100%. So I think that, and I think that touches on like what we talked about earlier a little bit in terms of, you have an obligation, right? So those people didn't help you because they thought that you would just take this information and, help yourself and then be done.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like the purpose of developing other people, right, is so that those people can develop other people.
Yeah.
The purpose of making one person better is to hope that person makes one person better, and that's the goal, right? Is that we constantly are trying to go ahead and inform each other and help each other and strive to making the collective better. Right. And by collective, I just mean like our society as a whole. And I mean, there's a lot of people out there who I think have, like bad ideas and I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they have bad ideas. They have bad habits. They can use a lot of help. And sometimes they received help once and it was bad. You know what I mean? and when you give bad advice and when you impart negative experiences on people, that makes those people more apprehensive in order to go ahead and receive a positive experience later. And that's one of those things you're saying, not everybody had that good experience early. Not everybody had that, that great coach or that great teammate or that good friend that took them aside and gave them good experiences or good knowledge or good information. Sometimes people have that complete opposite.
Yep.
And that's also one of those things where it's like, sometimes there's people out there who are really trying to do something good and they don't know what the heck they're talking about. And they're actually giving like really bad advice. Yeah. And then that leads to people being more apprehensive and less trusting of each other. Yeah. And so it's like, and that's why we should kind of stay in our lane a little bit too, I think, with the advice we give in terms of like what our knowledge base is. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I see what you're saying. I think it's all right to go to a person and say, listen, I care about you and I want to help you. I really don't know what I need to tell you right now, but I'm here for you. Let's go find it out together, right? Like it's important to say, I want to be there and help you, but I don't understand this either. So be honest. Don't try to pretend that you know something you don't know, right? Because you want to make a difference in that person's life. It's so interesting too. You talk about guys and helping you stuff in the past. For me, like some of the stuff that coaches have said to me or my father or grandfather or other people that were kind of mentors, I don't think I fully understand what they totally meant until like it's gradually over life. Like as you get older and you look back and think, oh yeah, now I see where that applies. Like with Herb Brooks, she also had the same passion in her heart. Like, and, literally he meant if you're going to pass the puck, put your heart in it, work hard. But he also meant in the rest of your game as you played or the rest of your life. And I didn't figure this out until later on in life that like put your heart into what you do, right? Don't just hope that it's going to happen. Like, you want to be a great strength and conditioning coach. You just don't show up and say, well, I hope I'm good today. Like you prepared yourself, right? You studied it. Like I can tell by talking to you that it's your passion now too, right? It's like you're going to go in there and teach those kids and you're passionate about what you're doing. You're not just showing up and putting in your time. You want to really put your full effort into helping these these kids. And I think that's really important too. If you're going to do something, even if it's like some young kids too, I talk to, and they're like, got a job, and it's not exactly the job they want to have, but they want to go on to the next one and get, be a president of a company or whatever it is. Whatever job you have at that particular time, if you want to get better for yourself and keep moving upward, well, you got to be the best at what you're doing at that particular time, right? They just don't show up and put in your time, because the boss isn't going to elevate you upwards into the company if you're not doing the best you can right now with the job you have, right?
Yeah. So to touch on the first half of what you said, right? About like you're going through and you got this advice, right?
Yeah.
And you're not really sure like how that fits in yet. And then like 5 years goes by or so, and you're like, there it is. That light bulb moment happens, right? I think a big part of that is when I worked over at NC State, there's a coach over there, the head strength coach for the football team named Antonio Burnett. He used to have a saying all the time, because I'm a bookworm, 100%, right? Like I got into the profession late in comparison to my peers, right? So I'm older than other people, but like in the same amount of like tenureship of what I've been doing this on a collegiate level, right? And so like I feel like I have a lot of catching up to do. And what happens is I read a lot of these books, and Coach Burnett used to always say, content without context, right? He's like, you got all this content, you don't understand the context with which it fits in. We also used to talk about that in terms of social media and applying that like fitness stuff on social media and like how people see it. It's like what you're getting content, but you're not getting the context with which it's being used. And that's part of like an issue, right? And so in life, we'll get all this content, especially from our mentors, right? And sometimes it takes us a while to figure the context within which we use that. And sometimes it's like you go years, sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's days, sometimes it's immediate that you experience the situation. But we're constantly gathering content, and life experience is going to go ahead and provide us with the context with which we need to use that experience.
Right.
And then the other thing about trying to be your best, I mean, what's that saying? It's like if you're how you do anything is how you do everything, right?
Yeah.
And so how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're not doing a job that you give a crap about, like even when I was in the personal training world, right? Like I was in the personal training world and I made mistakes. Like I made mistakes, but I didn't make and like it goes back before. Like I was well-meaning, right? And I thought I had the information. I was misinformed, and and I made mistakes. And if you ever meet a strength coach or a person who works in fitness and they tell you they haven't made this mistake, they're a liar.
Yeah.
Right? Or they're the only person to ever go through this profession mistake free.
Right.
Okay. Because everybody has done a trial and error of something, and they look back and like, wow, I probably shouldn't have done that. That was irresponsible. And so if you're not constantly trying to get better, if you're not constantly trying to adapt, if you don't enjoy reading about, experiencing what you do for a living, like if you're in the stock market, right, you should love those numbers. You should love waking up and like reading the reports, right, on the Dow and everything. Like that should be like what drives you, right? That's why Warren Buffett is who Warren Buffett is because he could read all day on that stuff and talk about that stuff all day. And so if you're not in a profession where you're like that, and not everybody's going to have like something that they're super passionate about, right? Like you don't have to be like, like The Office, right? They're selling paper, and it's like, so you don't have to be passionate about paper, but you can be passionate about sales. You can be passionate about that aspect of your profession. You can say, I like building, because that's all sales is. I like building relationships. Yeah. And I like creating friendships and networking, and I like reaching out, and I like sitting down and having drinks with strangers and hearing their stories, because if you're not doing that in sales, you're probably not very good. Right? And so it's like whatever you do, you need to be passionate about it. You need to want to be better at it. And if you're not trying to be better at it, then you're falling back behind. You're not staying stagnant. Right. It's like if you stop trying to get better, you don't stay at the level you are because everybody else is getting better. Yep. So if you don't try to get better, you move back. You're moving backwards. Yep. So you got to constantly progress to stay at least at status quo for where you are in terms of like your profession. Mm-hmm. And if you're not working harder than other people around you, then you're not going to move up that ladder of where you stand in your profession. Yeah,
no, I agree. It's interesting you talk about that context, content, but no context. Small little story, and I tell people this all the time. You've probably seen this video, this Admiral William McCraven, the Navy SEAL admiral, where he talked about the importance of making your bed. Have you seen the video?
Yeah.
So I remember I first watched that and I thought, wow, that's kind of cool, you know. And I was like typical guy, you know, so I go to my bed and, you know, pull the sheets up and make it look kind of halfway. And I went back and watched the video again, and I realized I missed the whole thing. I missed the whole lesson there, right? So you got to go back and you got to make the bed perfect. The idea is to do it perfect. You've got an opportunity there. Nobody's stopping you. You know, nobody's, you know, trying to mess it up for you. You go make it perfect. And how that then leads to the rest of your life. If you can't do the little things right, you can't do the big things right and everything. But it's funny, I kind of laughed at myself after, because I thought when I first saw the video, I got the context. I thought what it meant. And I realized I really hadn't, right? I didn't get the full meaning of, and since I've gone back and I make a big deal about it now, making that bed, like when I leave the room after I made the bed, I stop and look at that bed, and like I'm fired up, like over a bed. Like, but it's amazing how like I missed the lesson there at first and went back and saw it. Like now I see what he meant. There was a real powerful lesson there. So it's amazing. Like I feel like I'm 61 years old and I'll be 62 next month. And it's just been over this last probably 3 or 4 years that I started to really like realize, geez, Tom, there's more, you've got more to do. There's more in you. And, you know, I felt like I've been very successful, you know, 11 years in the NHL and being an agent, raising 2 sons and all that. But I really had so much more to give. And I didn't want to just say, oh, I'm 61 years old. So let's kind of, you know, fold it in, you know. I joke around. I tell everybody, it's like, you don't want to be that old guy that goes down to Florida and pulls his pants up to his nipples and, you know, goes golfing all the time. You know, no disrespect to the men that do that, but
it's not that bad.
Yeah. So, but I just, that's like going on Survivor and all that kind of stuff. It was more like I just want to do things, you know, get better and better every day. So, well, listen, this has been a fantastic talk. I know you're a busy man. I'd like to do it more often, maybe try it once a week or whatever gets you on. But I was really thinking we were going to talk more about fitness and everything. But I'm very glad we got off on the subject we did, talking about the mental part of life and fitness and all that as well. So great to have you on board.
Oh, it was awesome. I appreciate you having me.
All right, guys. Talk to you soon, guys.
Take care.